Why haven't I said anything so far about the brutal rape and murder of the 31-year-old medical student in Kolkata? Welcome, Vanakkam, and a heart brimming with the blood of suffering. I have been asked this question particularly by the camp followers of a particular ideology and party. I refrain from mentioning the identity involved here because it is superfluous to do so. Well, it's true that I have not said a word, and I now need to tell you why. There are two reasons for this. First, I simply do not know what to say. Secondly, I know this much, that what I really want to say will not please many ears in India at the present time. Let me tell you why I do not know what to say, first of all. For the reason that I am a father, for the reason that I have two daughters, and for the added reason that both are doctors. So, do you really think that I do not feel for the victim in this context? Even if I were not to have two daughters who are also doctors, even if I were not to be a father, even if I were to be only a semi-conscious human being, don't you think that my heart would bleed even at the thought of such a possibility? The thought not merely that a young life has been snuffed out at its prime, but also at the thought that humanity can be degraded to this extent that a man, alone or otherwise, can perpetrate this outrage on an unarmed human being, male or female, a life that is dedicated to mitigating the suffering of fellow human beings, a life that is devoted to serving people without caring for rest or recognition through the day and night, and medical students work 36-hour shifts. The general public do not know this. The most exploited, the most hardworking section of our working population are medical students and junior doctors. It's an atrocity in itself. And who does not know that they have to work in conditions riddled with insecurity, exposed to all kinds of outrages? And why is it that we can spend thousands and thousands of crores of rupees on securing VIP comfort and security? We can afford to neglect the security of our women doctors who have to work through the small hours of the night, who have to be continuously exposed to the people, which is an integral part of the work that they do, and therefore have to, by professional compulsion, accept all the risks that go with it. And why is it that in spite of hundreds and hundreds of episodes happening in which the vulnerability, insecurity and threat to the physical inviolability of our daughters in this category has been illustrated, exposed, demonstrated beyond a shadow of doubt, not enough measures to ensure their security have been put in place? Now, this kind of public display of sentimentality that's routinely undertaken and soon forgotten is meant to serve as a cover-up. Even if it is not deliberately meant to serve as a cover-up, it is serving as a cover-up unwittingly, willy-nilly. And I do not want to make any contribution to this sentimentality, this unmeaning, insincere, hypocritical sentimentality, what would my saying something on this occasion, sitting at a distance, do to help improve the situation? Yes, there is something I can do to improve the situation, and that is what I want to do. And I wanted to wait for a little while before the passions died down, so that some rational thinking can be undertaken on this very crucial, agonizing subject. This seems to be the one thing that nobody is interested in. When something like this happens, everybody plunges into an emotional whirlpool. A great deal of sentimentality is splashed. People come out in the open, display their sympathy, affection, solidarity, etc. And then a day or two later, it is back to business as usual. It's as if nothing has happened. No one cares to follow up. No one cares to ensure that corrective measures are actually put in place. How many daughters, how many sisters have been raped and killed? Have we really learned lessons from any of this? Starting particularly from the Abhaya episode of 2012, I was in Delhi at that time, and I know the massive outbreak of public indignation in that context, which resulted in some legislation. But I need to say something on account of the legislation. We have to be particularly naive in believing that by making the laws more and more draconian, the security of our women in the workplace can be ensured. Evidence so far has proved that to be the contrary. Maybe the number of episodes has come down a little bit, but the brutality has only increased. The reason is very simple. Prior to the legislation, since the Abhaya case of 2012, the punishments meted out to rapists and sexual offenders was not as formidable as it has become since then. What has been the result? The result is that those who perpetrate rape, those who take advantage of the physical vulnerability of women, they tend to kill their victims. Previously, they would have allowed them to survive. A large number of rape cases now result in the murder of rape victims because, according to the logic, the reasoning of the rapist, that's the only way to protect themselves. They have to destroy the evidence. The evidence otherwise will go against them. The evidence of a surviving rape victim is enough to secure speedy conviction, and therefore, what you have done unwittingly, I admit, unwittingly, is to provide very strong and irresistible motivation for rapists to kill their victims. And I am pretty sure that that has happened in this case as well. So I am not among those who believe that simply by making laws and punishments more and more draconian, this problem can be solved. Then what are we to do? That's a question that we need to do, and in this context, I cannot but read out a paragraph from a statement released by Vinesh Phogat. It's a 3-page detailed document that can move even stones of heart. I limit myself to reading only a single paragraph from that. To that I immediately proceed. I read. During the wrestlers' protest, I was fighting hard to protect the sanctity of women in India. Please note these words. I was fighting hard to protect the sanctity of women in India, the sanctity and values of our Indian flag. But when I look at the pictures of me with the Indian flag from 28th May 2023, she is referring to the street agitation she and several other fellow wrestlers had to undertake, and in that context undergo serious humiliation. So, when I look at the pictures of me with the Indian flag from 28th May 2023, it haunts me. Look at the word used, it haunts me. It was my wish to have the Indian flag fly high this Olympics, to have a picture of the Indian flag with me that truly represents its value and restores its sanctity. I felt that by doing this, it will be correctly reprimand what it will correctly reprimand what the flag went through and what wrestling went through. I was hoping to show that to my fellow Indians. Please notice that she uses the word sanctity twice in the single paragraph. She attaches sanctity to womanhood. She also attaches sanctity to the Indian flag. So, she says that she came onto the street merely in defense of the sanctity of the women of India. Now, we know how she has been rewarded for it. We know what price she has had to pay for it. I am not here saying that what happened to her in Paris is directly an offshoot of the street fight she undertook in 2023. I do not want to go to that extent. But I feel that the significance of the struggle that Vinesh Phogat and others undertook has not been adequately understood. And that's precisely what we need to do in this context. Before I go into what actually needs to be done, or as a prelude to that, let me say what we should never do. To me, there is something far more immoral than rape and murder, and that is trying to take political capital out of rape and murder. Now, obviously, there's very most heartbreaking episode in Kolkata which should never have happened in a civilized society, which should not happen even in a jungle. It's being politically sponsored, it's being politicized, and when anything is being politicized, it is done with the intention of reaping political capital out of it. To me, that's downright immoral. It doesn't matter which party does it. All parties succumb to this temptation, I am aware of it, and it's equally reprehensible, vulgar and condemnable irrespective of which party does it. I am not convinced that the many voices heard loud and clear in this context are sincere voices and a commitment to protecting the security and physical inviolability of our women, the sanctity of womanhood in India, is really the driving factor in this public display of indignation, etc. Many of the doctors, in fact all of the doctors who have come out on the streets are sincere about it. I am not doubting their sincerity even for a moment. I am talking about the political voices that are heard and particularly the kind of media coverage this event has been receiving consistently in a sustained manner, as though there is no other issue in this world, as though no other rape is happening or no other rape has happened in the past, even by holy men, and the holy men who have raped women who entrusted themselves to their ashrams are quite in the knowledge of it is quite in the public domain, and how political parties quote them, prostrate themselves before these rapists simply because they have millions of followers and their following can be converted to electoral gains. All this we know. So, I am unable to persuade myself to believe that the profession of sorrow and agony and solidarity with the victim's family, etc., on the part of these politicians comes out of a sincere heart. I find it very hard to believe. Now, if it does, it would have been authenticated by a whole lot of other things. For example, on what basis can you and I believe that in the political culture of India, there is a trustworthy element of respect for women? How safe are women within the political culture of India? Leave alone the public culture, leave alone criminals. How many politicians have been accused of rape? What has happened to them? After all the struggle that Vinesh Phogat and others undertook in 2023, May of 2023, involved a politician. What happened to him? Well, here in Kerala, a bishop was accused of raping a nun 13 times. What happened to him? The court merely said that there is not enough evidence to prove that he is guilty. The court didn't say that he is innocent. And if you go through that verdict, it will make very interesting reading. I refrained from making further comments on that verdict. So, the real problem here is not only that there aren't enough physical means of protection offered to women who have to work in situations of risks through the small hours of the night, where they can be attacked under cover or in anonymity, attacked, and then the attackers can escape. They can be attacked without fear of consequences. That certainly is an issue. Women's security has to be improved by leaps and bounds, don't get me wrong. But far more important than that is a critical examination of the attitude that today prevails towards women in our society at all levels. I was very closely associated with a very senior woman politician. Her name is Nirmala Deshpande. She died a few years ago, and she was a very close associate of Srimati Indira Gandhi. She was a member of the Rajya Sabha. She was the foremost disciple of Vinoba Bhave in the Bhudan movement, and she told me that she has walked 50,000 kilometers with her guru Vinoba Bhave in the Bhudan movement. I am talking about a lady of that distinction. We became very close friends for a variety of reasons, one of which was that she wanted me to write out her memoirs regarding Indira Gandhi. And I sincerely regret that I did not care to, because I was at that time too busy with something that I was doing. I was writing a book myself. And I said I would do it much later, but unfortunately in the meanwhile she died of a heart attack. She told me, believe you me, she told me that it is very difficult for a woman of honor to survive in politics. I don't want to go further into details. These are extremely unpleasant things to say. But this reality has to be reckoned. Now let me come back to the word that Vinesh Phogat has used. She talks about the sanctity of women. My dear friends, that is the way forward. It is not legislation that will solve this problem. You give me one social evil which has been solved through legislation. One, dowry for example. Do you think this draconian legislation in order to eradicate dowry has actually eradicated dowry? Do you think it can do so? There are very stringent laws about corruption, so on and so forth. It only means that the corrupt will become more clever. It only means that criminals will become more adventurous, more careful, more ingenious. It only means that the victims will become more and more insecure. As laws become more and more draconian, the victims become more and more vulnerable and their predicament more and more dangerous. So the way forward is to seriously work at creating, enunciating, propagating a culture wherein which women are indeed valued and respected, and we are a long way away from that. Whatever we say in public is not the reality on the ground. And also, it cannot be that Dalit women, scheduled caste, lower caste women can be raped and no questions asked. And rape becomes an issue only when upper caste women or upper class women or women of a certain category are raped. Rape is a rape, a woman is a woman. Unless and until we promote respect for woman per se, woman as woman, irrespective of the labels of discrimination and distinction like caste, class, profession, etc., we cannot actually count on having done anything whatsoever in order to ensure the security of women. The tragedy in our society is that men are not trained to respect women. And this problem actually starts in homes. I underline the words, in homes. In a vast majority of Indian homes, daughters and sons are treated differently. So a boy grows up even in the best of homes with a kind of subliminal assumption that he is superior to girls and he has some special entitlements. And over a period of time, as the boy grows up, maybe he begins to think differently, he has better education, better opportunities to think, and maybe his conscience gets the better of him, and therefore he may begin to develop some inhibition about violating the integrity of another person's body and personality. But unfortunately, this beneficial formation does not happen in the case of many people. A good number of them live in circumstances where very vulgar and brutal influences are constantly playing upon them, whether it be pornographic literature, whether it be the kind of loose and vulgar talk, and most of all, whether it is in the prioritization of pleasure and indulgence. It is time for us to realize that we have together created a pleasure-seeking, pleasure-maximizing culture in which anything and everything can be done in order to seek and consume pleasure. And then, having started that process, one comes under the need to aggravate the degree of pleasure available to a person as consumer. And ask any psychologist, you will be told that what aggravates the pleasure or the consumption of pleasure, especially by the depraved, the criminal, the deviant, is crime. Crime serves as a catalyst for intensifying the pleasure experienced by rapists, sexual criminals, etc. So, in a pleasure seeking culture where no moral inhibitions are allowed to develop, and morality is actually frowned on upon, only very outdated people talk about moral norms. After all, in the domain of politics, we have created and sanctified post-truth politics, which means political processes, political goals, political strategies need not be hamstrung by any consideration for truth. If consideration for truth is renounced by us, what consideration remains? Please tell me. If politics can be pursued and practiced brutally by parties, and that can be justified as, something great, and if political efficiency is equated with political immorality, and here I don't want to cite instances to support my argument because they are all in the public domain. If that can be done in the realm of politics, what face do we have in putting up this sort of sentimental appearance? If for political gains thousands of people can be killed, and that is okay, and that's considered smart. And if respect for life, whether it is women or men or children or old people, doesn't matter, do what you want in order to attain your goal, and if that culture is in vogue, on what basis are we coming out in the open and saying, oh, this should not happen? Yeah, it should not happen. It should not happen. But you can't legitimize, valorize, glorify, romanticize this principle of brutal aggression in order to attain one's goals in one domain of life, in an important, publicly visible, pervasive, ubiquitous aspect of life, and then say violence should not be practiced in any other field. Now, this I find hypocritical to the core. Either we say violence is repugnant, under no circumstance shall violence be condoned. Violence is abhorrent in any context and every context without exemption. Or we say, well, those who can afford to practice violence and get away without having to face the consequences are smart people, which is unfortunately where we are. That was also why in 2023, wrestlers had to come onto the streets of Delhi in order to demand justice for 6 young wrestlers who complained that they were sexually assaulted. One of them a minor. So, my dear friends, this is the reason why I kept quiet so far. Not because I was unaffected by it, not because I am hard-hearted. It's because my outlook on these issues is very different from the journalistic outlook. I am not someone who would, pipe and sing for a party. I am not someone who will say that rape done under the in a state which is ruled by this party is morally repugnant, whereas rape done in another state ruled by another party is okay. I'm sorry, I can't do it. That's not up to me. Don't expect that from me. Rape is rape, it is repugnant, and a man who rapes a woman is worse than a wild animal, and that remains the case irrespective of the party he rules, the state where these repugnant things are done. That's where I stand. And I don't believe that this problem can be solved either through more draconian legislations or by 1,000 more protests being organized. This problem will be solved only if genuine, truthful respect for women becomes an operative part of our culture, and we are far from it as of today. And to me, these instances are loud invitations, wake-up calls to realize that we are not fair in the way we treat our women, and we have a long way to go in this respect. Well, even the idea that women should be given 30% representation in the parliament as charity, whereas they constitute nearly 50% of our population. What is this mathematics? I don't understand. How is such a big thing that 50% of the population is granted 30% representation? And even when they are given representation, even after they are elected, what is their voice in their concerned parties? So all these are tokenisms. This will not take us anywhere. We need truth. We are not truthful. When it comes to matters sexual, we are never truthful. We are hypocritical to the core. Western cultures are far more honest in this. They are vulgar, they are brutal, but they say, yes, this is what we do. They don't pretend to be, pious saints when it comes to sexual matters. They're very honest and truthful about it. And therefore, sexual crimes are far less in Western societies. So there is a direct connection between the insecurity that women feel in the Indian society and the hypocrisy that rules the roost as far as we are concerned. I am saying these words from Kerala, and I have to say with a tremendous sense of shame that women are far more insecure in Kerala, going by National Crime Bureau data, statistics. Sexual crimes against women on record are 3 times greater in Kerala as compared to a state like Gujarat. Now, this can be explained in a variety of ways, one of which is that in Kerala there is a much better, more efficient crime reporting system, whereas maybe in other states, this is only speculation, no scientific study has been conducted on this. Maybe in other states such reporting does not happen. Even if crimes are reported, the victim is more victimized or complaints are not registered or whatever. But the fact is that on record, this is a reality. And Kerala is supposed to be a highly developed society, very educated society, a society where women are liberated, so on and so forth. But this is a reality. So, these hard facts sober me down so that I am not able to jump onto the bandwagon of sentimentality, which is showcased for a certain few days and then forgotten, and nothing happens on the ground. The situation, the reality doesn't change. And unless the reality changes, patterns of crime, patterns of insecurity, patterns of risk to life for those who serve with sincerity, devotion, and extreme idealism will never be ensured, will never be avoided. If we want to provide to our women doctors and women workers everywhere safety in the workplace, safety out of their homes, then we have to enunciate a culture that is appropriate to it. In closing, let me also say this. Please don't think that women are insecure. Women are at risk only out of their homes. Shocking as it is, the truth is that women are more insecure. Their life is more at risk. They suffer greater violence in their homes, in their bedrooms, than on the streets or in the workplace. So a long, long way to go